These 50 cards represent every person who took the SAT college entrance exam in 2017. In America, this score, this ranking of students, is hugely important. Elite schools like Yale or Harvard select a large majority of students from this pile, the top 1% of test takers. And it's not just super elite schools. A flagship state school like the University of Georgia admits most of its students from this pile. And even a less selective school like Wichita State University admits most of its students from this pile. All three of these ranges are higher than the average score. This is why people pay lots of money to train for the test with companies like Princeton Review, Kaplan, and Prep Scholar. A slightly higher score can make a big difference. That's also why some really rich people got caught paying lots of money to help their kids cheat on the test.
Dozens of actors, coaches, and CEOs.
Felicity Huffman is accused of paying $15,000
to have someone either take the exam for their child or to correct their child's answers afterward.
Your place in this ranking can have a huge impact on what opportunities come your way. So it's worth asking, what exactly does the SAT measure? What does this score actually say about you? To answer this question, we have to start with this man, Carl Brigham. He was a young psychologist during World War I who was obsessed with measuring human intelligence. He would devise puzzles for soldiers that supposedly measured their intelligence by testing whether they could decode symbols, draw missing parts of a picture, or even complete a maze. He concluded that white people of English, Scottish, and Dutch descent were smartest. At the very bottom were black people and recent immigrants from Poland and Italy. He ignored the fact that some test takers didn't speak English, so answering a question like, how many are 60 guns and 5 guns, could be difficult. He ignored how some people were barred from receiving an adequate education, which meant some puzzles like this one could be quite challenging. He just assumed the scores reflected the innate intelligence of different races. And because of this, he wrote that black people were so much less intelligent that America should worry about racial admixture, which would incorporate the Negro into a racial stock and taint the population. After World War I, he wrote a new test to measure the intelligence of prospective college students. He included word and number puzzles, like, pick the 3 words below that are most related. Chops, liver, round, forequarter, rump, sirloin. Yeah, I don't know either. Anyway, Brigham's exam was called the Scholastic Aptitude Test, the SAT. The SAT wasn't very popular at first. In 1941, just 10,000 people took the exam. That was just 1% of high school seniors. Most colleges just didn't need it. They didn't have that many applicants, partially because less than 10% of Americans went to college. So they could spend more time with each application, and many elite schools administered their own entrance exams. Then, World War II ended.
The crowds cheered and waved flags, and the doughboys home from Chateau Thierry and Belleau Wood.
Millions of troops returned to the US, and there was a new benefit white veterans could take advantage of, the GI Bill, which helped them pay for college. College enrollment skyrocketed. All of a sudden, colleges had way more applications to sort through, and they needed a tool to help them figure out who to accept. So they started requiring the SAT, which gave them some numerical way to rank applicants. Meanwhile, the College Board started saying their exam measured college preparedness. And every few years, they proved it by saying their exam, along with high school grades, were a good predictor of how well students do in college. They still do this. For example, here's that analysis from this year. It shows that high school GPA alone gets us about halfway to predicting college GPA. But the College Board sold schools on this next part. If we consider SAT scores along with high school GPA, this prediction can get a bit better. And colleges bought into this rebranding and started asking for SAT scores. In 1941, just 10,000 students took the SAT. By 1950, 80,000 students took the exam. By 1960, 800,000 students took the SAT. By the next decade, it rose to 1 million. And now, more than 2 million students take the exam. And as the competition for college ramped up, the applications got stronger. In 1982, the average high school graduate completed algebra or maybe algebra 2. By 2004, the average student was closer to trigonometry. Also, more students had extracurriculars on their applications. In 1992, just 19% of high school students were leaders in an extracurricular activity. Just 12 years later, in 2004, that number doubled. And as competition got stiffer, students started applying to way more schools. In 1967, about 40% of students applied to 2 or more schools. Now, it's more than 80% of students. And a decent chunk of them apply to more than 6 schools. All of this overwhelmed college admissions offices, so they started to rely even more on the SATs. In 1993, 46% of schools gave considerable importance to SAT scores. By 2005, it was 59%. But looming over the increasing weight of this number was this other thing the SAT seemed to measure: wealth. It's apparent in the data. Here's a chart of the average SAT scores by family income. Students whose families earn less than $20,000 score around 890, way below average. And as we move up the income brackets, students score higher and higher. The wealthiest students whose parents earn more than $200,000 score an average of 1150. Now, defenders of the SAT have often said there's nothing wrong with the test itself. They say this score is just reflecting the inequality in America. And that's not wrong. We can follow that logic up the chain. We can start with America's highly unequal neighborhoods. Schools in poor neighborhoods are more likely to be under-resourced. And students from more affluent neighborhoods and schools tend to score higher on the SAT. In turn, students with better SAT scores go to more selective colleges. And this system is a cycle. When Stanford researcher Raj Chetty and his colleagues tracked people born in the early 1980s, he found that these people, who went to the most selective colleges, had parents who earned, on average, $171,000 a year. Parents of these people who went to selective public colleges earned $87,000. And those who attended community college had parents who earned $67,000 a year. And through this system, that wealth was passed on. Chetty and his colleagues found that students who graduated from these elite colleges earned, on average, $82,500 a year by their early 30s. Those who went to selective public college earned half that, $41,600, and those who went to a community college were at about $30,000. But Chetty and his colleagues found that if low-income students get the opportunity to attend a more selective school, they're able to graduate and earn just as much money as their classmates. In 2016, the College Board redesigned the SAT. The old test tried to trip up test takers. For example, asking about the meaning of obscure words, like acrimonious. The new one tries to test what you've learned in school, to try to make it less of an intelligence test. For example, it'll show you a sentence like, "The jungle has an intense clustering of bugs," and then ask, what does intense most nearly mean? Emotional, concentrated, brilliant, determined. Still, your SAT score measures how well you'll do in college, to a degree. It also measures where you grew up and what opportunities you had. But it's also a tool that keeps this inequality machine going. College Board President David Coleman sees this happening. He recently wrote, "We need a far humbler view of the SAT. They should never be more than one factor in an admissions decision. Low scores should never be a veto on a student's life." The SAT was created in pursuit of precision, an effort to measure what we're capable of, to predict what we can do, what we might do. What we've forgotten is that often that can't be untangled from where we've been, what we've been through, and what we've been given.